Welcome to Sagely Speaking with Mary Bono, the esteemed former Congresswoman known for her insightful perspectives and vast experience. Prepare to be engaged in thought-provoking conversations with influential personalities, exploring a wide range of topics, from social issues, politics, and policy, to personal development, shedding light on important issues that impact our society. Now, here's Mary.
Welcome to Sagely Speaking. I'm your host, Mary Bono, and before I introduce my esteemed guest for this episode, I'd like to extend a thank you to our sponsors who make this podcast possible: Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, or MAPTA, along with MAPTA Action, and Communities United for Smart Policy, or CUSP. All of our sponsorship information can be found on our website at sagelyspeaking.com. I'm grateful for their generous support in helping to make this podcast possible. And now I'm going to turn to our esteemed guest. Very happy to have him with us right now. This is Greg Totten, who became the Chief Executive Officer of the California District Attorneys Association in January of 2021, after retiring as the elected District Attorney of Ventura County, California. Greg was elected DA for 18 years of his 38-year career as a prosecutor. He is a lifelong Californian with a very distinguished career, but what brings him here to Sagely Speaking is a discussion about a ballot initiative he's hard at work with as he leads the official coalition called the Californians for Safer Communities. This coalition has crafted and is supporting the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. Again, that's a ballot initiative that they're hard at work on in California, which is an absolute Herculean task, to say the least. But Greg, welcome to Sagely Speaking. Before we get into the ballot initiative, you and I, look, you are a native Californian, born there, chosen to live your life there.
Correct.
I, on the other hand, was a transplant from Cleveland at the age of 2. So I was very lucky that my parents uprooted our family and moved to Southern California, where my dad was a professor at USC. So I consider us brethren, though. I consider myself a lifelong Californian. And I wanted to start our conversation with the great state of California and the California dream. And I think that the California I grew up in is not the California that I see today. Now, I know there's progress. I know things change, but a lot of things have become very disturbing, which is why we're here today, to talk about how to fix everything that is seemingly going wrong in California, which comes to you, Greg. So welcome to Sagely Speaking. And a lifelong California, what are we doing in California?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be with you, Mary. This is a real pleasure. And I'm mindful of your distinguished career of public service and want to thank you for all you have done as well. I am a lifelong Californian, a native Californian, and I love this state. I always have loved the state. It offers so much economic opportunity and a very, very diverse population, and then just extraordinary natural resources. And yet, as a Californian, I think like so many Californians, I'm troubled by what I've seen going on, particularly in the area of criminal justice and our homeless issue, as well as this problem of retail theft that has just exploded here in California. And so because of those changes, I think I and other individuals, a very bipartisan group, it's not a red or blue issue, are advancing an initiative to address both the problem of homelessness, which is profoundly negative here in California, as well as the problems of retail theft and fentanyl addiction and fentanyl deaths.
Well, they all feed into each other, do they not? And
they are all, unfortunately, inextricably linked. If you look at California from the standpoint of retail theft, we know that both large Fortune 500 companies that operate in California, as well as small mom and pop convenience stores and other retail establishments, they're all being impacted in a very significant way. For example, we had one retailer, small businessman, that told us 6 out of every 10 people who enter his store steal from him. Businesses cannot thrive. They cannot survive in that environment. But consumers are also being impacted. If you walk into many stores today, you see products that are locked up where you have to literally get a clerk to come and unlock a glass window to allow you access to those products. We see lessening of inventory. We see store closures. I mean, we had a major mall in the city of San Francisco shut down, major high-end retailers, because they just can't afford to do business in an environment where people are openly stealing from them every single day.
Now, my congressional career, we tried always to find a balanced approach. There's something called the law of unintended consequences that we try to avoid, yet it seems to happen probably more often than not. But how much of this is a result of Prop 47? And again, the pendulum swung so far the wrong way, it seems to me. And now, why ballot initiative? Why can't the state legislators fix this in their day jobs, doing what they're supposed to do to fix all of these problems? For you and your colleagues to bring this directly to the people, as I said in the opening, it's Herculean. It's a lot of money, it's extremely expensive, and it's a lot of manpower. Is this the only route to go?
It is, unfortunately, and it is the only route in part because of the plain language in Proposition 47. That initiative sought to do a couple of major policy changes. First of all, it took a broad swath of theft offenses and converted them from felonies to misdemeanors. So today in California, somebody, as long as they steal less than $950, can steal repeatedly. They can literally steal every single day of the month and suffer no consequences beyond a misdemeanor. And in California, misdemeanors are citable offenses, so these individuals aren't even arrested typically. The second thing that Proposition 47 did was it took, again, a very large array of narcotics offenses, possession of hard drugs, things like heroin, fentanyl, cocaine, PCP, methamphetamine, and converted all of those possession offenses to misdemeanors. Historically, we use the overlay of a felony conviction to incentivize people to seeking treatment. Unfortunately, even though Proposition 47 was billed as something to increase treatment and reduce incarceration, it's actually reduced treatment because that incentive of a potential felony consequence no longer overlays those individuals, so they just cycle in and out of our system if we can ever get them to court in the first place. And so as a consequence, we've seen this explosion in theft because there's no accountability. Similarly, we've seen an explosion in homelessness and open-air drug use, and sadly, overdoses, because we literally cannot get these people to participate in treatment programs. What we seek to do with this initiative is, first of all, deal with the problem of repeat thefts. So individuals who steal 3 or more times would be eligible for felony prosecution under this initiative. Secondly, we seek to deal with the issue of treatment. We know that many people that are homeless suffer from both mental illness, but they also suffer from drug addiction. And if we can get those individuals to participate in treatment, we're very likely to be able to turn around that problem. So again, on the third offense, a person who possesses hard drugs, only the 5 drugs that I named earlier, would be eligible for a treatment mandated felony. If they go into treatment, they'll never do a single day into jail. And if they successfully complete treatment, their conviction is expunged. Our goal is not to incarcerate people that have serious drug issues. Our goal is to get them into treatment and change their behavior. That's why this initiative has such broad appeal. The polling on the initiative is through the roof. Literally, when you look at all the different provisions in the initiative, it polls at the 94% level. That's virtually unheard of in popular initiative debates. Similarly, it's popular, as we're finding in the signature process. People are literally standing in line to sign this initiative. Under California law, to put in a measure on the ballot, we have to go back to the voters, and we have to secure about 546,000 valid signatures. We're going to turn in substantially more than that. We will most certainly qualify this initiative, and it will most certainly be on the ballot in November of this year.
Well, congratulations on that. I know it is extremely daunting to look at something like that and those numbers and the manpower again on collecting those signatures. But when you unpack even the title of this initiative, Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act, I don't believe there's a single Californian who hasn't been affected by one of those. So, and it's a very passionate issue. These problems are really coming home to roost. They're now on your front doorstep. They're happening in our communities. They're happening in our families. So I can imagine how passionate people are when they support this ballot initiative and they give the signature to get this to the voter. Can you talk about the bipartisanship? Because I'm very happy to see the level of bipartisanship you have. And I know, look, once this qualifies, the opponents are going to come out of the woodwork and they're going to create all sorts of arguments and false narratives about this. But you have some pretty interesting supporters. And can you tell us about them? Yeah.
Yeah, we have broad support. As I've said earlier, it's not a red or a blue issue. For example, Mayor London Breed, the mayor of what is perhaps the most progressive city in the nation, San Francisco, has endorsed the initiative. The mayor of San Jose, Matt Mahan, also a progressive, has endorsed the initiative. Even the mayor of Santa Monica, which has a longstanding reputation as being one of the most liberal communities in the country, the mayor of Santa Monica has also endorsed. We have numerous organizations that are endorsing the initiative, many social justice groups. The Reverend Al Sharpton's organization, both his national and Los Angeles organization, have endorsed this initiative. And we believe that's because this is a very thoughtful and measured approach. And it doesn't matter whether you're living in an urban center, a rural area, or an economically challenged community, you're being impacted by this problem. And you're seeing it up close and personal. And Californians, as our polling showed, overwhelmingly want change. One thing that's interesting that's going on is the legislature is starting to debate retail theft. And there's a myriad of bills that have been introduced by both leadership and individual members. But the reality is those bills don't address the problem. They seek not to go back to the ballot, which is required. The only way we can fix 47, the only way we can amend and address its unintended consequences is to submit it back to the voters. Interestingly, from a legislative standpoint, there have been no fewer than 20 proposals to amend Proposition 47. All of those proposals have been killed in committee. We've been universally unsuccessful in getting the legislature to pay attention to this issue until now. We think our initiative is certainly motivating legislative debate and discussion. We stand ready to negotiate with them. But at the end of the day, I think it is highly likely that that negotiation will not produce anything that meaningfully addresses this problem.
You know, when you say debate retail theft, I almost chuckled out loud. How do you debate retail theft? Oh, okay, part of it is okay? Or, I mean, it's just that common sense thing is lacking in the state of California, in the legislature anyway. But when you look at other progressive states, New Mexico, and I know you have this in the ballot initiative itself, you talk about progressive states such as New Jersey, Maryland, Illinois, Michigan, have significantly stronger hard drug laws in California, yet their homelessness rate is 4 to 5 times lower than California's. So these numbers are interesting, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the state of Oregon to recognize they're trying to put that genie back in the bottle for all the mistakes and failures that they made there. But where I want to put on my more centrist or sometimes left-leaning brain here is, look, I understand. I have had family members who've suffered with substance use disorders, my whole life. I understand the need for compassion and empathy. I understand the need to understand this as a disease and how do you handle the disease of addiction. I believe sometimes we've gotten that wrong. And I'm a big supporter of drug courts. But I understand that drug courts are sort of a thing that are going away in the state of California. Is that true?
Yes, drug courts have largely, since Proposition 47, have largely been reduced and in some cases abandoned altogether, in part because there was no demand for the program. If you take a drug addict, and sad as it may sound, many individuals that are suffering from severe addiction don't make good decisions for purposes of their future. And so every day in courts here in California, we'll see these individuals show up and they will be offered treatment. But their choice is between a treatment program that's going to last 12 to 18 months and being back on the streets literally that afternoon and using drugs again. And they almost universally choose the latter. And so we believe very strongly that the criminal justice system has a role in addressing drug addiction. We need to be able to compel people into treatment. We're working with a professor out of Stanford University named Anna Lemke. Anna Lemke wrote a best-selling book called Dopamine Nation. She is a big supporter. She's an addiction specialist, and she's a very, very big supporter of the need to address drug addiction and the ability to address drug addiction through the criminal justice system and its ability to compel people into treatment. Prior to Proposition 47 as DA in Ventura County, I often attended drug court graduations. And you'd hear very tearful, compelling stories of these people who had been reunified with their family, who had jobs, and who were back on track with their lives. And we know that treatment is vitally important to changing behavior. If we can't get people into treatment in the first place, that behavior is not going to change. And sadly, a significant number of those folks are overdosing. They're living in utter squalor on our streets. It has become a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions, and we just have to deal with it. And we believe this initiative is a huge step in the right direction to address that problem.
Addiction is a disease that fights you. It really fights you. It tries to keep you sick before it lets you get better. And recognizing that somebody going into treatment is not a cure-all, it is a lifelong process, and it's hard work. But for the state of California to have policies that enable people to continue to use and potentially kill themselves, as you're saying, the overdose death rates it is terrifying. It is a humanitarian crisis. And when I see these folks on the street, I see people's children. That's the lens I see this through. I see this as people who have a loving mother and father at home. Of course, not everybody, not all of them. But I think, again, bringing some compassion to this is important. But I do believe the judicial system needs to be the perfect partner. A long time ago, I learned, somebody suffering from any use disorder, alcohol, drugs, needs to hit bottom. They have to hit their rock bottom in order to be picked up and to get themselves healthy again. And that's a hard road. It truly is. Something that I see in the initiative, too, is I believe it gives some leeway to judges on the sentencing. And now, are all judges sort of enlightened to this? Do they understand the nature of addiction and what has to happen, and that this is a partnership between law enforcement and the recovery communities? Because I could also see that one judge who doesn't feel that way and throws a book at somebody, and hey, maybe that'll work too. But I'm believing that the whole system has evolved, and I have faith in that.
Yeah, I think we drafted this with an eye towards being compassionate towards drug addicts and getting them treatment. And I think in any discipline, whether it's the judiciary or frontline law enforcement or prosecutors, there's diverging opinions on things. But this initiative would become the law, and it is very encouraging of treatment. And in my experience, the judges who are assigned to drug courts, the judges who are assigned to specialty courts dealing with these types of issues, tend to be judges that, number one, have developed a fair amount of expertise and knowledge on addiction. And number two, are really focused on changing behavior through treatment. And so I have great hope and great optimism that once this policy is implemented, it's going to produce some significant changes in treatment for the better.
Greg, if you'll bear with me for 1 minute, I'm going to cut to an appreciation moment for our sponsors, and then I will continue with Greg. So I want to thank Communities United for Smart Policy for the support of Sagely Speaking. America's fentanyl crisis is putting unbearable strain on families and communities across the country. We need comprehensive action that stops the illegal flow of fentanyl across our border and provides our communities with tools like readily accessible naloxone to help save lives. Please join Communities United for Smart Policy and continue the conversation on X and Facebook at Cusp Action to help bring an end to this preventable tragedy, which leads me right back to you, Greg, and shifting a little bit the topic. I appreciate your tone on some compassion and understanding the disease of addiction. What about the bad guys who are deliberately targeting our children? There's such a huge difference between somebody who's living in addiction or with an active addiction and the bad guys who are preying on our families, our communities, and our kids. What can talk to us about what you want to do about the dealers and the people who are really big, bad dealers? Can you talk to us about that?
We do have some drug trafficking provisions, particularly dealing with fentanyl. Fentanyl, I will tell you, in 4 decades as a prosecutor, is the most lethal, the most dangerous drug I have ever seen. So 2.2 pounds, a kilo of fentanyl can kill 500,000 people. It is a modern day form of poison. And unfortunately, there are traffickers in communities across this state and likely across the country that are plying their trade in drug trafficking, selling fentanyl. It's readily available. It's very inexpensive. You can literally go purchase a tablet of fentanyl in just about any community for about 75 cents to $1. And it is highly addictive and is highly lethal. So our initiative seeks to address fentanyl traffickers in a couple of ways. First of all, again, our legislature has been wholly reluctant in addressing fentanyl in any meaningful way. They've had prevention programs they've approved. They've had treatment programs they've approved, but they've done nothing as it relates to, or very little, I should say, as it relates to drug traffickers. So this initiative will do a couple of things. First of all, for drug traffickers who are convicted of trafficking in fentanyl or other hard drugs, they will be given a mandatory notification by the court upon their conviction that if they sell this drug again and someone dies as a result, they are eligible for prosecution of homicide up to and including murder. That's something we have done for a generation in the driving under the influence arena because we know drunk drivers kill people. And it's something we need to start doing in this initiative. It is called Alexandra's Law. It is named after a young lady who sadly thought she was buying a Percocet and instead got fentanyl and died as a result. Secondly, we add fentanyl into a number of provisions dealing with hard drugs, including the provisions that deal with traffickers who traffic in large quantities. So a trafficker who sells large quantities of fentanyl can get enhanced punishment. Similarly, traffickers who sell fentanyl and are armed with deadly or dangerous firearms can also get enhanced sentences. Those are a few of the provisions in this initiative that are focused on consequences and accountability. And we think they will go a long ways towards combating this problem that we've got.
Is the fentanyl analog issue a problem? I know the DEA and others will say that, there's one molecule different. The manufacturers will create a new fentanyl and therefore then we can't go after them. Is that, can you all, by you all, I mean the prosecutors, get around that fentanyl analog issue?
I think we can. It's a challenge because any time you're dealing with a synthetic narcotic, it can be varied mightily. Our laws in California are such that we should be able to qualify it as fentanyl as long as we can produce an expert that says it has the chemical components of fentanyl. But drug dealers are incredibly innovative. The whole illegal drug trade is very dynamic and it changes. It pursues profits above all else. And I think we are equipped to respond to that.
I know that First of all, Matt Capilouto, Alexandra's father,
Yes.
is a friend of mine and of this show's, and we appreciate that you've included the admonition language in this ballot initiative. It's hugely important. I know there are many, many, many families of fentanyl poisoning victims, let's call it what it is, and that's a poisoning, who support this. And I know that we're going to see a lot of them between now and when this ballot is before the voters. But I was going to ask you about the role social media plays in this, that kids can now go to Snapchat or you name whatever platform they're on, and a dealer is there waiting to target them. And I don't know that the ballot initiative, I guess I do see successful prosecutions going around the state of California. Now there are some DAs that I find myself cheering for them for their work, Mike Hester in Riverside County and Morgan Geyer. Is that the exception, or is that normal? Are more of these prosecutors able to go after these fentanyl overdose killings?
I think what happens when you see a crisis like this, prosecutors respond to it. We're training on it as an association more frequently. Dealing with, law enforcement and fire department officials have long seen overdoses. Overdoses are not new, but the poisonings that we see in the case of fentanyl are new. Historically, law enforcement would view an overdose as an accidental death. Somebody who had an addiction got too much and they died as a result. Increasingly now, especially with regard to fentanyl, we are treating these types of deaths as poisonings, as not an accidental death, as a killing. In California, we have a law of implied malice. So if somebody undertakes an act that they know is inherently dangerous, and do it regardless of that knowledge, and somebody dies as a result, they can be prosecuted for homicide. So now frontline law enforcement, DAs are viewing these investigations as homicide investigations. And we're able, you mentioned social media, we're able to retrieve that information from phones. And oftentimes that information is very compelling evidence that we use to prove these cases. I know, for example, in Morgan Geyer's county, Placer County, they've had 2 convictions, both by pleas. Mike Hester obtained a conviction in Riverside County by jury trial, and I believe has got another case pending in jury trial as well. And so I think as a profession, we are trying to respond to this as responsibly and as promptly as we can.
You're thinking a jury trial, almost every single one of those jurors would have been affected by this, and that would play into their feelings. And I know the vetting process, whatever fancy Latin word you all call that, joie, whatever you call it, where you're interviewing the potential jurors. But everybody's been affected by that. And I think that's must be helpful that they have a real understanding of what's going on. I believe that this ballot initiative can be the beginning of turning all of this around. And I believe the voters are seeing that and supporting it by signing up to put this onto the ballot. And I believe it's just essential that this has to happen. And again, these 3 things feed on themselves. And I'm hopeful that you begin, rising tide lifts all boats. You fix one, it begins to fix the others and the others and others. And at the end of the day, I guess I have to bring up the moral failings that somehow we see, that people think it's okay to go in and steal $949 worth of merchandise, whether that's a large Fortune 500 company or whether that's a small mom and pop store on, every town's main avenue, but where they think that that's okay and it's good, and how we've gotten this mob mentality. Well, everybody else is doing it, so I'll do it too.
I think part of our focus is, if it's a first-time theft, it's going to be dealt with much differently. Proposition 47 would still apply to the first and second thefts. But for individuals that are stealing over and over again, we have some provisions in this law, both for smash and grab thefts, where literally, like, we have a store here in Southern California where a smash and grab occurred, and a group of individuals stole more than $300,000 of high-end bags in less than 90 seconds. Those individuals need to be treated more harshly. Similarly, we know that when people conspire together, when they act together, the conduct is normally more harmful. It does more damage. Our common law has recognized that for hundreds of years. And so we have provisions in this initiative to focus on the more serious offenders as well to ensure they're held to account.
When I read this, I do see, again, I've stated it, but I see compassion. I see leading with compassion and then trying to get the worst of the worst and change behavior. When I was in Congress, I used to so often work with somebody on the other side of the aisle. I served as a Republican, and I would work with Democrats, whether they're very, very liberal or more centrist. But I believe when we see and recognize the problem and we come out of denial, right, we all agree these are problems, and then we disagree over the solutions, perhaps. But if we come together as a people and debate them, yet come together with the best of intentions and put down our armor and really try to solve these problems, we can. And I think, again, the bipartisan support you're seeing on your initiative is proving that. What the left has tried, the far left has tried, isn't working. And I just want to show appreciation for Mayor Breed and the others who are coming on board. Again, let's put aside our differences, agree these are real problems affecting California and, oh, by the way, the rest of the country too. And let's roll up our sleeves and come to the best solutions we can. Another thing, I know you live in this world too, Greg, not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Right. That people need to come together. And I think we've come a long way, and I'm hopeful with this ballot initiative, again, that it is the beginning of turning the tide towards a better future for California. Is there anything, what can our listeners do to help? By the way, our listeners are, of course, national, they're international. Mm-hmm. They're not all going to jump to be necessarily helpful for the California ballot initiative. However, they're going to realize this affects them too. And the cautionary tales that are in it. How can, let's say, our California listeners be helpful? What do you need from folks in California to help this succeed?
Well, we have a website. It's casafecommunities.com, all one word. And they can go sign up for information very quickly, and they'll get regular newsletters on what we're doing on the campaign. I think the most important thing they can do for us right now is vote, and is plan on voting on this, communicate with friends and family members about the importance of this initiative. All of the information they need is on that website. Certainly, we will have significant opposition. We've already raised literally millions of dollars to qualify it. We will also have to raise millions of dollars to support it in the media and make sure that the public is educated on it, because we will have opposition. It's almost a certainty. The same people who advocated for Proposition 47 are likely to advocate against this and spend large sums of money doing so. So to the extent that people want to contribute to the campaign, we certainly welcome that as well. Our goal is California is known as the Golden State. One of the sponsoring organizations of this initiative is called the Golden State Communities. And let's make California golden again.
I love it. So you were elected, I was elected. The hardest thing to do is raise money and ask people for money. So let me do it for you. On the website, you mentioned there's a wonderful donate button that people can click on. It's a very clear and concise website. It gives the information, and there's a donate button. And whether it's $5 or, unlimited amount of funds people can contribute to this, I think it's very important that they do. We are all in this together, for sure, our families and our communities. And we want to wish you the best of luck and just thank you so much for coming on to try to explain this, and hope you'll come back later on after this ballot initiative does qualify and we can talk about how the campaign is going. Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank you for your years. You thanked me in the beginning for my service, and I'll thank you for yours too. My daughter-in-law is an ADA in Houston, and I know it's a tough job, but the people who do that work are usually on the right side of the angels. So I want to thank you so much. We're here. MAPTA, Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, is a proud supporter of this initiative. We are signed on. We're on your website. So again, thank you very much. And I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors once again who make this show possible. Communities United for Smart Policy, Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, and MAPTA Action. We'd love your feedback. So if you have any thoughts, concerns, or questions, we can be reached at hello@sagelyspeaking.com. Please like, subscribe, and share. And with that, again, thank you very much, Greg. And we look forward to having you back. And thank you very much for our listeners. Until next time, be well.
Thank you for joining us today on Sagely Speaking with Mary Bono. Remember, wisdom is a journey, not a destination. For more insights, visit our website at sagelyspeaking.com.